I believe we need to advance mass transit options in our city if we're going to maintain our economic success. With gas prices sure to rise in the future, with traffic getting worse as our population grows, people need access to less expensive, more convenient transportation options. And Middle Tennesseans are beginning to understand that we just can't pave our way out of this problem. Already, the average household in the Nashville region spends nearly 25% of its income, far more than the national average, on transportation costs. We need to give people affordable transportation options that will allow them to leave their cars at home and still get to where they need to go. And we know from our own economic development work that businesses looking for places to relocate and grow want a city where their employees have access to true mass transit options. We all know that our region competes with cities like Austin, Charlotte, and Denver for new businesses and new residents, and we compete each and every day. And I'm sure it is not lost on any of us that each of those areas is ahead of where we are now when it comes to mass transit. Our city is at a crossroads. We have a decision to make. Do we come together now to find real mass transit solutions, or do we do nothing? If we do nothing, if we choose not to move forward with advancing mass transit in Nashville, we will be consciously choosing to put ourselves at an economic disadvantage to our peer cities. We will be limiting our potential for economic growth. We will be guaranteeing worse traffic congestion. And when gas prices reach the $4, the $5, or the $6 per gallon mark, which they are predicted to do in the not too distant future, people will be asking why we've done nothing to give them a practical alternative to cars. I'm happy to report that the city is not going to stand still when it comes to mass transit. We are moving forward on two fronts, regional and local. A few years ago, we started a regional partnership called the Middle Tennessee Mayor's Caucus. The caucus includes about 40 county and city mayors from throughout the region. We meet regularly under the leadership of Mayor Moore, who's doing a great job, to discuss solutions to issues we all face. And right now we are focused on transit. All of the mayors in the caucus agree we need to find a way to offer common sense transit options to people throughout our area. A lot of those options are laid out in the MPO's 2035 regional plan, which outlines a bold new vision of mass transit. Of course, it is up to the mayors to find ways to implement parts of those solutions. And we're making real progress. We've been ably assisted by organizations like the Transit Alliance, which is working to engage the business community and to help Middle Tennesseans understand what mass transit can mean for them. I expect that we'll see quite a bit of progress on that front in the coming months. We are moving forward on the local level as well. Many of you already know about the East-West Connector, the bus rapid transit system that will travel in the dedicated lane down the busy 7.5-mile corridor that stretches from 5 Points in East Nashville to near White Bridge Road in West Nashville. The East-West Connector will allow residents and visitors to move along the corridor faster than they can move in a car stuck in traffic. It will stop at attractive stations that have real-time arrival information, and it will employ technology like off-board fare collection and high-end environmentally friendly vehicles that will make the ridership experience quick, comfortable, and easy. As a regular bus rider, I try to do it once or twice a week, I can tell you that we have a great MTA in the city, a great transit authority who do a wonderful job. And if you haven't taken the bus to work, I recommend it. You get on the bus and everybody's pretty much happy in the morning. And you get on the bus and you can read, you can talk to folks. I think you'll find the drivers to be invariably friendly, competent, and going out of their way to be helpful. And then you ride downtown, and if you stay on the bus to the end, you get off at the Music City Central, and to reward yourself, there's Dunkin' Donuts. So it's all good. And that conflicts with the last speech I gave about healthy eating and living, but that's all right. The East-West Connector is a game changer, and I think it will transform the way people travel around our city and our region. It will serve as a backbone of our regional mass transit efforts. Once it is open, someone who takes the train from her home in Lebanon or Mount Juliet or Hermitage or takes the bus from their home in Gallatin or Brentwood or Bellevue can use the east-west connector to get from the train station or the bus station to wherever they need to go. I believe the bus rapid transit is the future of mass transit in mid-sized cities like Nashville. It has worked in many cities we compete with for business and tourists, from Cleveland to Las Vegas to Orlando. And I know it'll work here too. And speaking of transit that works for cities, joining me today is Matt Sibul, who is the Chief Planning Officer of the Utah Transit Authority. Under Matt's leadership, the Salt Lake City region has become one of the fastest cities in the West when it comes to building track miles and adding busways. Over the last decade, it has quietly put together one of the most comprehensive light rail systems in the country, with plans to build a supporting network of streetcar and BRT lines and to increase transit-oriented development. Matt has nearly 2 decades of experience in transportation planning and engineering, and we are lucky indeed to have him here today with us to share his expertise. Matt?
Well, thanks, and hello, everybody. Before I get started, I wanted to say that I ate every last morsel of my dessert today, but only after I went for a little run this morning and got to see your great Capitol, and I can tell you there are 236 steps going down the back side, exactly 236 steps. So, I'm happy to be here today. I appreciate Michael reaching out to us in Salt Lake City, and happy to share some of our story here. I did want to tell you that based upon what I've heard this morning already, you're already doing a lot of what I'm about to tell you that we have done. So, you know, hats off to you guys from what I can see already. So, so I've got some slides here that kind of tell the story of what we've done over the past 15 or so years. Who here has been to Utah? Okay, most of you. That's good. So this is where Utah is, and this is in case if that still doesn't look familiar, then this might ring a bell. So we're right next to Nevada. We have some beautiful scenery in Utah, 5 national parks. You're welcome to come out again if you've already been there and spend lots of money. We have Salt Lake City is our capital city. We have lots of mountains and picturesque settings. Our capital city, Salt Lake, is nestled in what we call the Wasatch Front. And you can see here we've got mountains on both sides and collectively known as the Wasatch Front. This is where about 90% of the state's population is which is about 2 million people live in this highlighted area. So we don't have that much overall density in the state, but the density we do have is really constricted to this one area. So these are probably statements that you guys have heard here, whether it's rail or bus rapid transit, as it were. These are the critiques and the statements that we heard leading up to the beginning of when we started to build our system. And it came from all sorts of people, and it's kind of funny to overlay that with some of the statements about some of the technologies that we have now, especially the last one where Bill Gates said 640K ought to be enough for anybody. So there's probably more than that in this little controller I have here. So we've gone really from nothing in 1999 to 136 miles the end of next year. And my friend Art Gazzetti was kind enough to say that we have 5 openings. There's actually only 4 starting in December. We've got, as you can see here, Commuter Rail South is going to open up in December. But I'll take 5 if you want to say 5.
One grand opening, or one ribbon cutting, 5 ribbon cuttings and 1 ground break.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And then we've got followed up next spring with our airport light rail line, an extension of our existing system down to Draper towards the end of next year, and then our first foray into streetcar, which I'll get into in a minute. A little bit about us at UTA. We started off in 1970 with 40 hand-me-down buses from LA, and This is probably a little known fact here. We started off, all of our funding was based on the liquor tax, which coming from Utah, you probably wouldn't believe that. But that's how we started out, and we've been through, this timeline shows a bunch of different public referenda on the top, and then some of the lines that we've opened on the bottom. So we have had a couple failed referenda, but most of them have been very successful, and it's been fun to tell that story. So our transit ridership, this is probably a similar graph to most major American cities. Ridership peaked during just around World War II, fell off with the rise of the interstate and all the highway building we've done. And then as you look towards the right, that's when we opened up our first TRAX line in 1999. And last year we carried about 42 million people and are expanding rapidly. The latest batch of projects that we're about to open, and in fact some we already have, is shown on this map. We call it our Frontlines 2015 program. And that's 70 miles of rail that we've initially committed to in 7 years. We're actually opening it all in 5 years, period of 5 years. We've opened 2 of these lines, the Mid-Jordan line, which is the kind of red line on the diagonal left of the page, the West Valley line, and then the other ones that I told you about. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I will. The airport TRAX line, I actually worked on this project. This is, I think for us, and it sounds like for you guys, there have been some real game changers in your transit area. And this is one, I think, for us to be able to get to a downtown area without having to rent a car. I think this is really going to be transformative for us. And so we're very happy to open this line up next April. Just some pictures of it. Again, this shows a little bit of the urbanized area. This is a street called North Temple. This particular line, the airport line, goes right down the center of the street and connects with the downtown area. It's about 3 miles of kind of urban corridor, which, as happy as we were about building this line, we were also extremely excited, and you'll get to meet her tomorrow. Salt Lake City and Robin Hutchison, who's their transportation director, they rezoned and changed the land use on this entire 3 miles of corridor. And so all the kind of empty parking lots you see now and kind of strip uses, that's really going to start to change. In fact, already has for us. There have been permits taken out, I think, to the tune of about $150 million worth of new work just since we broke ground on this project. We've got a welcome center at the airport, and wouldn't you know it, as soon as we started building this line, the airport decided to redo their entire terminal and concourse building, and so we're working with them right now to actually revise the location of this connection at the airport. But we're happy for them with that as well, of course. And it's kind of funny how you look at old photographs and, you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So this is an overlay of 100 years ago outside our historic Union Pacific depot on the upper right. And so you can see where we're at today. I wish we could have just used the same rail. That would have made life a lot easier. And then the other thing, we have a lot of horses in the Wasatch Front area, so when we build underpasses, they have to be very large structures. This one's down in Sandy. And then I mentioned earlier, we've got a streetcar line we're opening up the end of next year. It's a little 2-mile stretch, kind of a starter system of streetcar, and it was a great collaboration with the transit agency and then Salt Lake City and South Salt Lake. In fact, this project, I have to say, as much as my boss, our general manager, doesn't like to hear it, if it wasn't for the mayor of Salt Lake City, Ralph Becker, this project never would have happened. And it was really on his back. All the trips to Washington, D.C. that you heard about earlier, those are the things that just absolutely pay off, because you just try again. And we got a Tiger grant to the tune of about $30 million to make this project happen. In fact, this was the groundbreaking probably that Art was referring to. We had the Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood, come out earlier this spring. And the cities have grand visions for this particular corridor. Like I said, it's in an old abandoned rail corridor, but the land uses have already changed, the zoning has changed, so before the project is even completed, we're thinking it's going to be transformative, like you see here. So, how did we do it? It's hard to kind of it's hard to summarize all the ways that we did it, but I put this slide together, and again, you've heard these same themes, I think, throughout the morning about cultivating champions, building trust. We started out small. It sounds like you folks here have, and then once you prove your product and you deliver results, you really gain that community trust. And we've tried to act like a business, and in terms of the way we do business with our contractors, the way we have an incentive program set up for our employees. We do a tremendous amount of partnering and collaboration. Again, Robin Hutchison, who you can meet tomorrow if you stick around, she and I probably call each other 5 times a day on issues. And then we've had visionary leadership, and I don't say that to toot my horn. Our general manager and our past general manager, John English and Michael Allegra, have really built the organization from the ground up and provided a vision that I think has been, it's been easy for the community to see that vision and follow that. So that's really helped us tremendously. The state has stepped in, and one of the things that we always tout is the fact that Utah is a very good place to do business. And so there are a number of accolades you see here. And I'm pleased to see, too, that the business community and the chamber is here, and I've met a lot of business folks throughout the morning. And again, I think this is something that you guys are already doing. I actually saw there were 9 Fortune 500 companies in Tennessee, if I have my math right. I was looking, and that's great. We only have 1 in Salt Lake, so we won't try and steal from you, though, I promise. So, like you, we also have a program of projects that we're trying to develop beyond that 2015 program that I mentioned. For us, a lot of it is, there are some new projects out there. There's also just trying to connect the system that we've built together with more frequent service, more service, integrating technology, a pass in every pocket, we like to call it, having a mobile device that works as a payment device as well. We've also put a lot of focus on the transit-oriented development side and really hung our hat that that's the future of our ridership is not so much even on the supply side of the equation, but it's the demand side. It's having people live in the places that are easy to serve via transit. And I think that you guys have laid out that vision as well. And then we're also keyed into a lot of the, again, discussion today on active transportation and making those first and last mile connections to our system. And integrating the bicycle and pedestrian community. All of that is reflected in what's called our Unified Transportation Plan. There's actually this one document has all of the highway, all of the transit, all of the active transportation projects, including local roads, and compile that into one document. So we've actually started, we do a lot of collaboration with our DOT. And so they go around with this document in their briefcase just like we do, and we tout it all the time about how well we work together and move forward on things. And then ultimately, you know, it's the continued strive to make the case for transit, which I think everyone here understands. These are the issues that we've keyed into, and I think they overlap a lot with what you have here. Perhaps not on the air quality side. We have sometimes in the winter, if you come, we have some real nasty inversions that are just, they're not conducive to that fourth one of quality of life. But a little bit on the economic development side, the return on investment, that's a theme that you'll hear over and over, and I don't care if you're in Tennessee or Salt Lake or Alaska, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to hear. And so we've done a lot of focus and crunched numbers and determined that somewhere between $3 and $6 billion, and this is a graph you can't see because it's actively being vetted by our agency, as far as projects that have either been directly or somehow indirectly induced by the rail lines being there. And it's somewhere between $3 and $6 billion. The Sugar House streetcar project is on here actually. Again, this is one that we're not even half done building, and there's already $400 million of development happening in a 2-mile corridor. So we're really excited about that. And that's the kind of story that resonates. I think you'd all agree. We talk a lot about being able to accommodate all the population growth that we have, and then the congestion that would result if we don't build accordingly. And again, we talk about that on the highway side and on the transit side. I'd be curious to see how these growth rates compare with here. I imagine yours might even be more. And so we talk about congestion and so forth. Here's air quality again. This is a shot of downtown. We have, this is one that we always relate back to the economic development. We actually have several stories where we have a group called the Economic Development Corporation of Utah. And I'm sure as it is here, you have businesses coming in looking to either expand or establish themselves. And there was a company that was going to build in Ogden, an outdoor retailer company. And coming back into town towards the airport, there was a bad inversion day, probably a lot worse than this. And the UDOT, our DOT, has signs up, variable message signs, that on red air days, as we call them, they say, poor air quality, please drive less. And so as you're driving down the highway, you're sort of guilted into perhaps not driving. But this gentleman saw that sign, and that was, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back, and this company actually did not expand and open in Utah. Maybe they came here, I don't know. And then, you know, these are, again, are the kinds of things that I think we in the room and our friends and neighbors and constituents are always, it's the kind of stuff people want. Transit, walkability, bikeability, they just add to this kind of intangible element of quality of life and livability. And that's a hard one to try and make a number out of, but nonetheless, we always try and drive that point home. And I'm not going to talk about it here because Robin, I think, is going to address it tomorrow from Salt Lake City, but the region has come together, I think, similar to what you've done here. And we've developed what we call the Wasatch Choice for 2040, and it's actually more of a land use map than it is a transportation map. It links together with nodes and town centers and village centers, all of those rail investments that I showed you earlier. And they're all on this map. And so the local elected officials have said, we want to subscribe to this land use plan and develop 30% of the new growth on only 3% of the land mass. And so this was something that was Envision Utah was seminal in really kind of having the roots for this back in the late 90s. But the mayors, the local elected officials have really run with this plan and really subscribed to it. So that was all I had. I hope that tells a little bit of our story in Salt Lake. Again, we invite you to come out. I think some of you have been to Denver to look at some of their work, and they have a great program. Actually, their capital program, I think, is about double ours. But we have a lot of similarities. They're just a little bit bigger city. But we invite you to come out and kick the tires, and we'd love to tell our story and show you our system. So thank you, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have. So any questions for me now? Yes, in the back. Sure. Yeah, you know, Salt Lake City has built, I think they've built about 50 miles of bike lanes in the past 2 years under the current mayor, who's fantastic. And we're also doing a study right now. We've partnered with the DOT, and we're doing what's called we're calling it UCATS. It's the Utah Collaborative Active Transportation Study. And it's specifically designed to look and say, okay, what are the top 20 or 30 bicycle and pedestrian facilities that would link together with our transit network and increase ridership. And there's been each city has their own biking and pedestrian plan, but they haven't been linked together very well. And so that's really one of our hopes now, is to do more of that. It was really interesting for me. Most of the trails that we've done, or most of the bike amenities, the new ones in the past 10 years, have been bike lanes on the side of the street without the protected bike lanes. And some of the data on the, the injuries and so forth of having that protected lane it was fascinating for me to see that. Right. Question here, or comment?
I'm curious how much of your rail was repurposed freight lines, and one of the things about Nashville that's appealing to me is that it seems like we have just wonderful rail connectivity to some really nice areas of town, and I would bet that there's nobody here from CSX today. And so how do you deal with repurposing lines that have lived out their practical use into this light rail type use?
That's a great question. In Utah, the commuter rail system that I showed, so the 90-mile system, was built on right-of-way that was purchased from Union Pacific back in 2001. So about 11 years ago, 10 years ago, our Board of Trustees made that decision to spend, at the time it was thought a lot of money. It was $185 million for 200 miles of corridor. And so we've only built out on 90 of it. But having that real estate made it obviously a lot easier to actually build the lines when the time came to actually construct. And so our commuter rail system is all on excess Union Pacific right away. About, I would say, half of our light rail system is on excess, it's called the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad. And then the rest are in the middle of streets that you saw, like that North Temple line. The line out to West Valley is all center street running. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, you want to become close partners and allies with CSX. Yeah. Right. Any other questions or comments? Be happy to take any more. Okay. Thank you.